Hi, a very warm welcome to the WFM community discussion. WFM Community is an initiative by WFM Media to develop the world's best and the largest virtual platform connecting architects and the industry. And the fenestration industry professionals are looking for a media for to spread their ideas and the technologies which are coming up in the market. So we found a request, a necessity for such a community connecting brands to the architects and other professionals in the industry to keep you informed on the innovations, technologies, products, various other upcoming projects, as well as various innovative products which are coming in the market. So WFM Community has been organizing various events for the benefits of the industry members. This is what the second of the discussion which is happening on this. We welcome all of our speakers as well as our audience to this discussion. Today's discussion is going to be on the shaping of future cities and the role of facade design on shaping these future cities. It will cover various aspects like the fenestration design and facade design and various tools and technologies being used in the betterment of buildings. The speakers are, many eminent speakers are participating in this program. I would start with the introduction of architect Ravindra Kumar, who is the principal architect of Pragrup. He has been providing innovative design solutions for various emerging projects in India. He's a part of the Venkataramanan associate group and based in Bangalore. He has been working with projects all over the world, traveling everywhere, parting his knowledge with students in universities in India as well as in USA and Europe. Welcome, Mr. Ravindra Kumar. Our next speaker is Mr. Gaurav Sanghavi. He is the co-founder of Pentaspace Design Studio, and he's been working for 17 years as an architect with various projects. He's been working with architects like architect Charles Korea, architect Hafiz the contractor, and architect Vivi Doshi, who are the stalwarts in the architecture field. He's a graduate from Academy of Architecture, Mumbai, and he's got a degree in business management from Narsi Moji Institute in Mumbai. He's got expertise in design as well as the management part of it. A fantastic combination. Architect Gaurav Sanghavi, welcome to you to the platform. Our third speaker is Mr. Vigneswar. He is the principal architect and founder of Architecture Plus Value, a firm based in Chennai. Again, he is from a very, very well-known university, the CEPT University, Ahmedabad, CEPT. He's done his post-graduation from Netherlands. His work has been always the pillar for sustainable development in various projects. He had extreme professional experience in handling variety of projects. He is also a faculty in top architectural colleges in south of India. Our fourth speaker again is not an architect but a consultant for many projects, around 300 projects he's done in India and abroad. Conserve Consultants is a organization or a firm which spreads the message of sustainability in India for various projects. He's got over 30 years of experience in the field of energy management, green certification, sustainability, and circular economy. He's a graduate from IIT Kharagpur. He's a distinguished IGBC fellow as well as a lead fellow. He had been associated himself with various organizations like CII, TERI, IGBC, and been part of the Department of Energy and Government Organization in USA in parting knowledge to the people to develop green buildings. He has done various projects with the government organization as well as the involved in airport development of Mumbai. And controls data center, which is one of the biggest green buildings in India. Welcome, Mr. Juzer, Kothari, Managing Director, Conserve Consultants. Our next speaker is Mr. Architect Sandeep Roy. He's the head design at Advanced India Projects, AIPL. He's also got over 26 years of experience with the AEC industry, and he's a managing design developer and managing design development, project management, and construction companies, along with numerous landmark projects. He's covered the entire gamut of organizational functions, from strategies of planning till the completion of the project, as well as managing the engineering, cost and time effectively, giving benefit to all the projects. He's been working with almost 25,000 co-workers in various parts of India for various projects. He's also a visiting faculty in the project management at the famous institution, the SPA Delhi. Let me introduce our moderator, Mr. Hemjith Vengateri, the MD of Alumil system. He is promoted as the President CEO Asia Pacific recently. He is again a management graduate from UK. Hemjith is a project management professional from their the design as well as the installation process with all his expertise. He was closely worked with many leading architects, consultants, and clients across the globe in various landmark projects. He is also involved in the Palm Island Villas projects in Dubai, where in international racing circuit. The other projects includes the Universal Tower in Kuwait and Abu Dhabi Trade Center. He was Hemjith Vengateri. Now he will be moderating the session, and I am handing over this virtual stage to Mr. Hemjith. Please carry on with the discussion, and I'm sure that this is going to be a wonderful platform where people will be discussing on various subjects, informative subjects, and you will gain knowledge from all these talks. Thank you so much.
Welcome for the today's show, and let's I hope everyone is on board here, Renu.
Yeah, one person, one is missing, but he'll be soon in. He'll be coming in soon.
Okay.
You can start off. I'll just speak to him. Let me have a conversation. Let me check what is wrong.
Okay.
In the meanwhile, please start the discussion.
Okay. So, good afternoon to all of you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and a very warm welcome for the today's session. Our topic for today is shaping the future of cities, the impact of facade design. So I have a list of questions ready here with me, and these questions will be asked, to a specific speaker, but all are welcome to give add your inputs or comments in, if possible, all the questions. So let's move on to our first question for today.
Mr. Hemjith, 1 minute, please. Let me introduce Mr. Ravindra Kumar also. We have already given a short introduction to you and your firm in the beginning itself. Rest of the people are Mr. Gaurav, Mr. Vigneswar, Sandeep, Juzer, and Mr. Hemjith. Hemjith will be the moderator for today.
Apologies, yeah, go ahead.
Hello. So we have just started with our topic today, which is shaping the future of cities, the impact of facade design. So like my first question is that what would be the future design trends for high-rise buildings, considering offices, residential, retail, or hospitality and healthcare projects? We all know that due to the limitation of space, most of the cities have to develop vertically, and the concept of high-rise building become very common in design of existing buildings and the design of future and upcoming buildings. In earlier days, it was mainly used only in office and IT buildings, but later today we also use in high-rise buildings in all the segments, including residential, retail, hospitality, and also healthcare projects. So my question to this question may I pass to Mr. Ravindra Kumar. Thank you.
Hi, good evening to all of you. I think engineering is going to change the future of habitation, because man by nature has to habituate in the most natural sort of environment. More and more today we seem to understand that what our ancestors lived was more sense and sensible. We are learning to go back to our vernaculars. We are learning to be more rooted to placemaking and a space where we want to have familiarity in our responsive climate. So in such a sort of paradigm shift of thinking, what we call as the neo-modern or the post postmodern movement, where the classicists or even the modernists fail to define equation of existentialism, philosophers, theories have gone back to introspection. The nature of high-rise, the nature of living that people will capture will be very, very connected to the nature of how life responds to live. People will want to live on passive systems. People will want to live on things like, for example, radiant cooling, where you breathe 100% fresh air. You want to explore geothermal. You want to work with solar. You want to work with materials which have better biodegradable aspects to it. So I'm sure as we grow by, people are going to think a lot more of being responsible to the world that we all habituate in. And the future towers will definitely go into a transformation paradigm shift, and people will start understanding that iconographic nature of making buildings will not be sufficient. And what we see of places like instant cities in China or in Dubai or in India, will not be true to existentialism. There will be another layer that we'll all live by.
Okay. Yes, true. If anyone else would like to give their comments or inputs on this question, Mr. Gaurav, if you would like to have some words.
Actually, there are lots of ideas which are coming into the foray. We can use double skin facades, and there are a lot of these landscape facades which are coming in. But municipal rules are one area which are not catching up with the current trends in facade, and that is something which I feel needs a bigger push, because materials are being pushed into the industry. I think concepts are being pushed into the industry, but the rules and regulations are so backward that there is no scope to actually implement these concepts. And there is a challenge and there's a gap out there, which I feel as an architect, if that is filled, it could get the transformation faster.
True. The idea of forming WFM community is also one of the purpose, like to contact and closely working towards to the government authorities. And I hope more professionals come into the platform. This will will be more easier in the coming days.
I think a key dichotomy, Hemjith, if I may point out, that we are facing today is what is a building facade all about? And I'm sure today in the next 1 hour, so pardon me, I have a little cough. The dichotomy here is that we will be hearing a lot in the next 1 hour about working with nature and not defying it. At the same time, the whole purpose of a building facade is to protect you sitting from inside,
Yeah.
I cannot let you sit and be comfortable in your offices, and all of us who are here are probably enjoying 24 degrees while, I mean, I know Delhi is cooler, but probably not the other cities are there. I mean, you can't be sitting and working at 45-degree temperature if that's what outside. So that is what the fascinating part of a facade is to me, that you have to make it work for you and still not defy nature, right? I think we will keep on coming back to this theme over the next 1 hour. I mean, whatever I have seen from the topics that were given today.
I think Sandeep sir nailed it, and I agree with him on that part. Then that is one of the important functions per se. But the next important thing is also to create an identity. And that is where the question itself poses its challenge. Like there are so many different typologies which are put into the same question. Like for example, there is a office, there's a residential, there is a retail, hospitality, and healthcare. So as an architect, when we first look at the project and we look at what kind of an image or what kind of an identity we are trying to create for the project, the facade is something which is the primary aspect which we always turn to. When we really, and especially if it is high-rise building and that building is going to be visible from multiple vistas in the city. So the identity aspect with respect to the design and the available choices of facade will be making a big impact in terms of, you know, what materials we choose and how we choose to express the building, and whether we want to hide the form, whether we want to make a hotel building look like an office building and an office building look like an apartment building, which is happening all across the globe right now. We are not able to tell the difference between these different types of buildings. Do we want to express them? Next thing is the context we are in. Whether we want to respond to the Indian context, whether, I mean, if I'm uprooting a building directly from China and I'm transplanting it in Dubai, are they both working in the same way, or am I making something specific for India? Or if I'm sitting in Chennai, am I making specific for Chennai versus Gaurav, who's sitting probably in Mumbai, versus you know, the other people who are sitting in their own city? So are we making something specific for that particular place, or is it, you know, too generic and international style and diluted in a way? That is like a very important question, and that is a question which architects are going to be, I mean, you know, addressing going forward, and it is purely within the realm of the choice of an architect going forward.
Yes, true. The occupant comfort on various segments is very important. Like, you know, you have different levels of comforts in you know, hospitality and in the office and also in the residential area. So this is one of the major point which is you know, always we have to look into the design stage itself. So if anyone else to add some comments on these points, or shall we go into our second?
From my side, what I see is that there is a lot of pressure on the cities to accommodate more and more people. So when that sort of pressure is coming into our urban design, urban habitat, whatever dreams that we have of sustainability or of language or of skyline, of everything, I think goes out of the window after some time. The pressure to accommodate people, to the pressure to make the buildings, what should I say, affordable for people, that pressure is a lot. And how do we overcome that as we go along? Because the cities are going to expand and double and triple as we go along. I think that's the biggest challenge that we as building professionals face as we go along.
Thank you. Thank you for your inputs. So let's move on to the next question. The question is, what are the critical facade and fenestration elements in future buildings, and the key factors which will allow the building facade to adapt to the future? So we are asking about the critical facade and fenestration elements for future buildings. So may I ask Mr. Juzer Kothari to give some inputs on this?
Yeah, I think I've been seeing this entire industry of building and facade grow over the last 20 years. And from a primary objective of a structurally sound, watertight and aesthetically good-looking facade, the designs of facade is now factoring in the element of performance. Performance, what I mean by performance is a thermally efficient facade, performance which is energy efficient, and as well as comfortable for the occupant inside. One of the key things that I have seen change over the last 10 years is the onset of real-time simulations in the design of facade. So most of the good large buildings that are being designed, they are using simulations to understand the glare factor, daylighting, views, heat transmission. And these simulations are so powerful that you can see minute by minute the impact of shade and shadow, both from neighboring buildings as well as from the shell shading of a building. And real-time performance of your ideas on shading designs, profiles, patterns can be actually evaluated without any assumptions. So this is one very big onset in the design process of facade. The other thing which I see now happening of late, and we at Conserve are doing quite a few projects on that, is the demand of the market for net zero or near net zero buildings. Now, when we are going to construct a net zero project, the key part of the entire cost optimization of the project is the heat transmission of the facade. And specifically for the smaller projects, where the envelope to the floor area ratios are very high, the heat transmission of facades become very critical. In net zero buildings, again, which is going to be the future, they say that from today to next 30 years, almost 50% of the building projects in the world will go towards near net zero or zero. So in near net zero or zero, the performance of the project in its entirety is very visible. We cannot use any grid power when the building is operational. So when we design the facade for a net zero building, even sometimes when we use the best heat transfer properties of the material, we still are not able to meet our desired energy balance because the construction and the operations of the facade is not up to the mark. When I say that, I mean that there are a lot of air leakages in the facade. So this is going to also play a very critical role. Design is one part, the construction and its maintenance is going to be a very important role in facade design. And this whole balance has got to be achieved. One last area which I want to say that testing of facades. I think in India, we are far away. What sort of work that is happening in US or Europe or in the Gulf on testing of facade, where in certain countries it is mandatory. In India, that whole process has got to be brought in. That's it. I mean, there are many other areas that one can talk about, but I'll stop now.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, please.
Want to add a very quick thing. I mean, I'm very happy Juzer mentioned about the testing and making it mandatory. Unfortunately, it's not happening in India, but I'm a big proponent that it should happen in terms of, just regulations should say that it should happen. I also heard him, and I want to mention one little thing because I was smiling at it. He said that one of the things in the last 10 years he has changed is the impact of the neighboring building. See, one of our problems is that we always, in the early days, we always had the tools, but we were evaluating the building performance as a standalone building in the middle of nowhere. And I go back to like 26 years to my own post-graduation thesis topic, which was literally impact of neighboring buildings on the heat load of a given building. And I come back to that it's now the tools are available. And I totally agree with Juzer that now the tools are available that in an urban scenario, when a building stands in a very dense situation where you have multiple high rises around you, you simply cannot evaluate or simulate a building as a standalone building, just taking its own facade into account. There are shades and shadows that happen from the neighboring buildings. There are radiations that happen in the neighboring building if they have too much of radiative glass. You have to take that into account to actually simulate. And today, in the last, literally, I mean, Juzer mentioned 10 years. I'll even narrow it down to the last 5 years, but maybe I wasn't aware. But it's happening, and the tools are available today to actually evaluate a building to that degree of accuracy of the facade performance, that what does the neighborhood do to you and your building. It's extremely important, and I can assure you there is anything between 15 to 20% impact. It could be, I mean, I'm not saying, I'm just throwing a number, but given your neighborhood nature, the difference could be 15 to 20% to your heat load calculation. And so if you are loading that to your lifetime cycle, lifetime cost cycle, you are really talking some big numbers.
Definitely, the tools and software makes our life easy nowadays. And I would also like to comment on the points that Mr. Juzer has mentioned about testing. Testing has been carried out in many projects in the recent past, because you know, the arrival of international system companies in the market, which is generally you know, tested and certified before the product comes to the market. So this trend has been started in most of the high-rise buildings in India, and we do have a couple of testing centers in India, and which they do it with all the standards, you know, American
regulation. It's still discretionary, right?
Yeah, but the percentage of this testing should be increased. You know, like there are a lot of local you know, products also coming into the market. So, you know, it has to be tested and certified, so that you can, you know, at least expect some performance what you are expecting. So this is true. Anyone else would like to have some comments on it?
I think I agree that, you know, for example, when we do large RCC construction, even homes, large homes, we tend to make sure that the concrete that is poured is tested. You know, there are procedures already intrinsically growing into the practice, but for some reason, certain segments of the industry has not been recognized as requirement. You know, most of the time in very large projects, it's not even mandatory to check concrete, but because of the fear of failure, you know, people tend to do that. And I think that's not kicked in to this part of the world. And I think I completely agree that only incentives will encourage people to fall prey to this program. And I agree with what Gaurav mentioned earlier. For example, Bombay bylaw till the last 2 years before used to have this little possibility that you could build planter boxes and it could be devoid of FSI. You know, it was such a strange bylaw inclusion that the municipality thought that every apartment could actually, you know, grab a pinch of balcony or a little wardrobe box by sort of not deviating, but using this clause of a planter box. You know, that was only to encourage that the idea of a bungalow or the veranda or the possibilities of how the colonizers thought that the city should encompass a large amount of green would be a continued practical sort of initiation. So I think, you know, I agree that green initiatives must be given incentives, and there has to be a very serious thought program to recognize the method in which these clauses can be included. And we are in some way, you know, very, very lucky that the cost of construction is literally 1/10 what people would build in Shanghai or the United States. I mean, even the biggest tower structures in India would be in the tune of around $10,000 to $11,000 rupees per square feet if you remove the costs of interiors, and which is still by far just $150 to $175. When you look at the cost of construction today in China is nothing less than, $1,400, $1,300. So therefore, we must all thank our imperial and incapable pinch of legislation that our costs are still low in terms of what we build. But having said that, we must not compromise on the nature of quality. So I completely agree with Juzer that there has to be clauses and initiations, especially on the walling systems for high-rise buildings. I think it's very, very important for us to recognize that for the generations that would live beyond time. But the introspection for India is about the tropical nature of living. I don't think we should look at Australia. We should not look at, we cannot look at the United States or the European community to answer to our questions. And we have to look at our own neighbors as Thailand or Vietnam or, Colombo. Bangladesh is doing very well than India, for example, places like Singapore, where we understand the nature of the tropical sort of Homo sapien for us, and then reinvent the ideas of making, which is why I think some of the buildings around the country are ghastly, because we seem to recognize certain parameters of initiation. I totally agree that every building is going through simulation. When I built the Infosys Park in Bhubaneswar, we built both the first parcel of 100 acres, and now we are building the second parcel of 100 acres. We have a clause from Infosys which states that if I do not achieve the quality of light, and if I do not achieve the quality of green initiation on air conditioning, 10% of my fees will be cut off. So, and also for the tower, the tower building that I cannot get daylighting to the quality that they define, I will be refused to be paid fees for that tower. So which is, I think, fantastic. And today, they are going almost on zero carbon footprint in spite of having built such a large volume of facilities. I think, more and more we must grow into such captures of being responsible in the method in which we build through legislations and through initiations and incentives. And when I say legislations, force majeure. So this would provoke the nature of green initiative. For example, if you look at hotels as an industry, or residences as an industry, or resorts as an industry, the moment you enter into Shangri-La or the Grand Maratha, you almost forget that you live in India. Everything totally changes in the nature of its physiognomy, the quality of finish lines, and they bring in a huge amount of contextual nature to its growing. There's a lot of rooted regionalism into the nature of architecture that we can see. Whereas, in the office towers or in the housing enclaves, we are yet to explore that kind of a connection as what we find in the hospitality space or basic individual bungalow home residential nature. So therefore, we have to reinvent the wheel. We need to go into more awareness introspection. And that's one of the reasons why I established a vertical practice called RUST in Marlborough. I'm a visiting faculty at the Marlborough University in New Hampshire. And there we initiated something called as rigorous urban sustainability training initiative, which means to say that we need to very quickly do something in the next 5 years. And if we don't do that, we are going to fall flat on our faces. So I think we need a wake-up call.
Thank you. So let's move on to our next question. What is your views on transformation of buildings for the future cities? May I ask this question to Mr. Vigneswar?
Yeah, thank you. The future of the facade. So as the previous conversations have been going on, there have been a lot, the topics which have been touched are simulation, sustainability, regionalism, identity, and the pressures of building a project by itself. So putting all these aspects together, I would say that the future of the facade is going to be more intelligent. So we are going to be looking at intelligent facades with respect, which are going to be satisfying all these factors put together. And the architect is going to be sort of a catalyst in this process. I mean, the way the profession is going to change with respect to these facades are going to be that the architects already are going to be setting just the tone or the direction or general vision of the project, and we require specialists who have significant expertise in making facades, who are going to be plugging in with these professionals and working on the entire project by itself. So the nature of the practice is going to be more collaborative, and the nature of the facades are going to be more intelligent. And definitely I have a positive outlook for the future in terms of where we are headed, even in our country, with the kind of conversations which we are having in this forum also.
Mr. Gaurav, would you like to add some words on this?
I think parametrics is going to play a very crucial role, because in intelligent facades, I think that is the next edge in terms of design, where the surrounding actually puts in input into the facade, and we can actually design a parametric facade. So I see that playing a very, very crucial role, at least in the urban landscape in facade design, parametric facade.
Okay. Anyone else would like to add some views?
One thing that there is a whole study that is going on, that if our buildings, I'm talking about the study, and I'm talking about heat island effect of a city. I mean, all of us would be knowing what is a heat island effect. The temperature of a city or a built zone rises up. So there are studies that are going on by which they say that if the building design and the paints that we use and the facade that we use and the sort of external reflection of the glazing that we use are controlled within a particular limit, we would be able to get 10 to 30% more rainfall than what we are getting today. So studies are going on that. And I think water is going to be very sensitive. Water is going to be not available. And this could also be a factor in terms of future building and city designs as we go along.
Yeah, true. Okay, thank you. And let's move on to the next question. And how will the concept of public spaces evolve, considering safe, livable cities? May I ask this question to architect Ravindra Kumar?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
How will the concept of public spaces evolve, considering safe, livable cities?
I have a pinch of a didactic opinion. I hope there'll be less people in the cities in the future. The pandemic will encourage them to stay home or go away to some remote villages and resort areas and log in, and we don't want any of the software engineers in the city. That would be a joy for the city. I have nothing against them. I'm only encouraging them that they'll be living in better places, better hygiene atmospheres, and better weather conditions. So with that possibility, definitely, I think the city's public spaces will become much more livable again. One of the experiments that we did in Bangalore is we collaborated with the city corporation, and we revamped the whole of Church Street. And as of last week, it's gone completely pedestrian for 3 days a week, which is fantastic. And people are allowed even to come out onto the streets and put chairs. Cafes and restaurants are allowed to have a few numbers based on their square feet. This is a special allowance that the government has made to encourage the pedestrian and the cycle traffic in the city. I think which is growing consciousness, and hopefully I think public spaces will grow into this kind of a sort of a new initiation over the years to come. If you look at most of the cities, for example, even from the city where I come from, Bangalore, the last time ever somebody initiated a huge green park was like 300 years ago when Hyder Ali came to Bangalore and decided he's going to nominate, 120 acres as a park. And before that, or after that, was Lord Cubbon, who made this park only to state that the white community have a boundary, and they grew a green patch around that boundary, and no colored man could enter. And they used to actually give them tokens, and they had to get back into their black quarters after 6 o'clock in the evening, and they were allowed. And at least these were the initiations. After that, there is no government which has actually initiated a huge urban park, in a city. And a few places have actually encouraged, of course, the waterfront development. They've built a few gardens along the edge line as a good profit-making sort of initiation. But where is this initiation that, our kings and queens and probably 200 years ago, what people did? So I think that needs to come back into inclusion, and the governments and the people and the community must stand up to fight for that position, and then only the public spaces will become a livable sort of realm. Otherwise, I think in India, it's still far-fetched, for us, to go to either Chidambaram or to go to Madurai or go into Kashi, sort of Vishwanatha temple, and look at the fringe of that sort of traditional, regional, historical, local would still be the connection to the memoir that we all relive as belonging to a public realm. The new city infrastructures are yet to build these possibilities, and the mall is a mania. So I do not ever progress that a mall space should ever be recognized as a public realm for people gathering and people meeting. So these are very, very pertinent, important questions that we must all introspect and include in our new architectural being. So every project that we do must recognize its responsibility to its nature of reciprocation to the street, in its proximity, and in a large way to the city that it belongs to. When architects tend to do that, I think the change will intrinsically work with the environment, and we will be able to build a better responsible public realm. Otherwise, I think it's still a sort of an oxymoron that we all discuss forever about this public space which doesn't exist at all,
Very true.
I'm not very sure what this particular question has got to do with the facade, but I do have a very a bit of a contrarian opinion on what in India we believe as public spaces, to be very frank. I mean, I am of the opinion that public spaces should be as open and as democratic as possible. I heard two words in the question: public space and safety. The only way to ensure is to make it democratic. Let there be hawkers, let there be a magician, let there be a juggler, let there be people who are there in the public realm, keeping an eye on the space, and that's what makes it safe, number one. Number two, I heard Mr. Ravindra also talk about the green spaces and the green parks. We have this tendency to make these green parks and then put a fence around it and then lock it up in the evening, and then there are existing cases, and even in our neighborhood Bangladesh, where there was this whole green park which was being used because it had a very high wall and a boundary wall and locks. So inside it, whatever you do, people would creep in, and then there were all kinds of nefarious activities going on. Then these architect group interfered, and then they removed the entire barrier and made it a public space where in the evening, where the neighborhood kid would stroll in and along with their grandfathers and grandparents, give back the public spaces to the public and see how the safety works. That's the only way. You cannot put a boundary wall and cannot police a public space and make it a public space and make it a safe public space. I'm a very, I am very strong in this opinion, and I have promoted this in a lot of places. But unfortunately, India is not very adaptive to this thought.
I had just one thing to say on my idea of public spaces, that there are two types of spaces that are emerging out in India. One space is the new construction or new development, new design, new cities that are happening, which takes care of public space to a certain extent. And the other is the old city. The problem is the old city, where we have not designed the roads or the public space for the cars or the vehicles that we are using. There is no parking in the apartments. Parking is all over, and that messes up the entire definition of what we want to do with the area and the spaces around us. I have a very simple solution which has been practiced out in a few cities, is that the government in these old cities take over some space and create a large, multi-storied parking area. And everyone, and they should be at various pockets available throughout the old city area, and everyone has to park there. The moment if everyone parks in an orderly fashion, you will find all the space available for use. Just a small thought.
Just an interesting observation. Because of the pandemic, at least in Mumbai, there was a phase where there used to be balconies in every apartment, and they all faded away and they became flower beds, as Ravindra really pointed out. And now suddenly there is an inquiry from all the clients that please provide balconies. So, it's just that, you have to go through this curve, but it was already there. We let go of it. We put it inside into the space. We encroached upon it. And now suddenly, because of the pandemic, when we were enclosed into our home and we want to go out, and the balconies are again there, so almost all projects which I'm designing have a mandate that we have to give a balcony. And first we used to rack our brains and tell the developers that let's give a balcony, and that time they were like, no, give more usable space. So the definition of these spaces within the apartment are also being defined again. The public spaces which we're talking about outside, but again there are these nice spaces within the apartment which all got enclosed into the facade, have started to come out again, where you can actually enjoy nature, have some plants there, get some sunlight onto you. All these basic things are coming back, which is a part of the facade, where we can breathe. So even a double skin facade, it was very difficult to convince a client for a double skin facade. And suddenly, with the pandemic there, one of our commercial projects, because he wants the inner skin to be very, openable. So he's gone in for the double skin facade. So, suddenly things which, as an architect, we used to propagate, but were, getting rejected. But because of the pandemic, these new concepts and the older concepts are again taking root, So I think this is the right time where if there's a right initiation, we can really create some change in the facade of our urban scape.
Yes, the ventilation and open balconies are coming back. Good to hear. Okay, let's move on to the next question. How to tackle with the safety of buildings? Because this is one of the key concerns of high-rise buildings. During the design stage itself, we have to consider fire, storm, wind, or any other natural calamities. So how to tackle this, the safety of buildings? May I ask this question to Mr. Juzer to start with?
I think safety is a subject by itself, and there is no negotiation on that. I, for that matter, believe that if the rules which are done by our building bylaws, if they are followed properly, there would be no compromise on the safety. But because we negotiate with that, we tend to bypass them. There are challenges of safety that come up, which becomes difficult to handle at a later date. So for me, the implementation of the regulations that are already in place is the key to safety. This is one. The second part, which I think is important, is in India, insurance and safety have not really come of age. Now, we talk of our insurance premium in a different manner and our safety standards in a different manner. At the moment these two things get connected, then all the safety features of buildings will come into play. That's it. I think we are very much there, but implementation of safety is an area of neglect.
Yes, we have a lot of experience in the near future with fire and storm, with affecting the facades and destroying the facades. So this is a very serious concern. So I would like to ask if some words with architect Ravindra also to add some points to this. Sorry, I think your speaker is on mute.
We as a nation, we are 1 billion people. Okay, first thing is we must learn to stop begetting. For little future generations to live better and happily, we need to reduce our population. When we survive with this volume of population, in this country, I also want to add to what Juzer said, is not only it is legislation, we need to become a police state. You need to exercise control on safety as force majeure. You have to indict very hefty fines and make it a control mechanism. A simple example, in the city, for example, the police corporation, traffic police corporation, just initiated that if at all anybody is violating his rules, he will be, removed from having a license for 3 months to drive or ride. This has become such a fantastic initiative that everybody suddenly grew into a fear psychosis. Now they're going door to door to collect their fines. The police have become aware, and suddenly within a month they managed to collect, almost 38 crores of fine from the city people. And suddenly they feel like, the city municipal corporation as police state has become, pretty rich. So why I'm trying to drive this point is that, the fire authorities or the high-rise building committee or the legislation, especially when it comes to high-rise building, have to become extremely punitive to put stringent measures on the developers or the builders or the architects or the clients, especially, so that there are these measures which make these buildings more responsible and accurate. Second is, for example, today as a practice, we are building the Boeing campus for the American company Boeing. Now, the TAC guidelines, for example, which is defined by the American, Institute of Architects, which allows a white man to come and work in India in a facility which comes under the guidelines of TAC only will stand insured. That means to say, if there is an overseas person who comes and sits in my building, and if the building does not have the same guidelines of the TAC, and if an accident happens to him, he will not be paid insurance, money, which I think makes both the builder, the architects, the construction supervisors, the managers, everybody grow into the relevance and importance of following a certain amount of guidelines to ensure that the building campus is accurate. And, that is where the success story lies in, I think, in this part of the world. So we must encourage, just to state as being a Gandhian, to say that you must all follow will never work. You have to be a Sardar who will go and control parameters and convert the nature of their religions to the nature of how we build. So therefore, I think that is very, very important.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, the control mechanism is very important to maintain the safety of the buildings. Yeah, true. Architect Sandeep would like to have some inputs here? No, okay. So let's move on to the next question. How can we incorporate artificial intelligence and other modern design softwares for effective facade and fenestration design? This is related to the design. So who would like to have some inputs here.
I think there are two aspects to this. One is AI forming a part of the design process itself. So wherein the software helps us to simulate the building, model it, and make it accurate to the particular project we are building and the function we are designing for. And the second thing is in operation and maintenance. In going forward into the building, if we are using active systems, like for example, a louver which changes its position based on the solar orientation, or which opens and closes based on the exterior temperature versus the interior temperature in an atrium. These are some things which the artificial intelligence system needs to look into. And AI per se is going to be having a major impact on the way architects are going to be designing or using software. So if you're following few Instagram pages and the social media, what is happening with respect to AI and ML, which go hand in hand, which is machine learning, we find softwares which are generating plans, multiple iterations based on the inputs which are being fed into them. Now that is very interesting to see. They are generating about like 250 options of a plan. I'm not saying that the architect is going to be replaced, but it would be very interesting to work with a force like AI and see how it is going to change the way design works or change the way an architect involves in the project. It's a very interesting position which we find ourselves in going forward.
Do you use other softwares like ArchiCAD and 3D architecture and Beam, Revit?
Yes, we are using Revit in our offices, but unfortunately, I would say that we are still in the nascent phase of using software. Not only us, but with respect to the general the fraternity as a whole, because I find that there are not many consultants who are very equipped to use these softwares, especially when you're working with developers and the external consultants are being chosen by the developers per se. So we are forced to go back to some of the age-old softwares, the classic softwares like SketchUp and plugins working with SketchUp and AutoCAD, and so that the consultants are able to handle them in a better way. So though we are itching to try out all these new techniques which are available for us to generate facades and to simulate the building and see what is going to happen.
Okay. So the next question is, please.
Can I say something?
Yeah, so please.
See, I think the use of IT in building design and in design process has been sort of limited to AutoCAD or Revit. I find it a bit sad because the construction industry is almost today around 15 to 17% of the GDP. Buildings are very expensive, in hundreds of crores, and they're going to live a lifetime. But the sort of IT that we are using in our construction of design and construction of buildings is very, very at a very, very low level. I just wanted to highlight, we did this work of the Mumbai International Airport at the T2 terminal along with the SOM architects. The way the daylighting simulations were carried out, the way the parametrics were defined, the way the data was captured and fed back into the design loop to improve the design. I have not seen anything like that happening in India for many other iconic projects. So I think we have a long way to go. And the team here and the WFM community, I would say that there should be a separate section, a separate focus only on the use of software in the design process. We need to do I think Kumar mentioned that we have to do something very fast in the next 5 years to change the shape of buildings. If we are able to adopt and use intelligently all the software and the data from them into our design process, I think we'll change the shape of buildings here in India.
So I
just to add that WFM community is really trying hard to bring in experts in this field. And most of our magazines are trying to include a lot of articles on design tools and how to use because of, the people are too immature, or probably they are in a very nascent stage, though there are a lot of softwares which are coming in the market, which is hardly being used in buildings for analysis, data analysis, and like the heat and the wind pressure and all those analysis, which will help to bring in or construct better buildings in India. So we are trying hard. We are trying to collaborate with various agencies to bring in experts, and where people can directly discuss for such certain aspects. Thank you.
I think it's a fantastic initiative. I must congratulate Renu on this workspace. And also, I must also congratulate Juzer for having mentioned about how we must transform the method in which we have to become more adaptive to new age methodologies and initiations into the community of software. I remember around 11 or 12 years back when Nandan Nilekani, who was the then chairman of Infosys, was interviewed by Economic Times. He said technology is going to transform the world that we live in, and there will be more transparency, it will become more democratic, and it will reduce the amount of nepotism and corruption. I think he was right in many ways, and we have only achieved a pinch of that milestone. There's more to us to live this whole life in a more democratic republic by using technology, and that gives you the strength of transparency. And for us, BIM and AutoCAD or Revit is just a beginner platform. Not we, as also an office, include a lot of software such as Rhino, CATIA, and also advanced sort of simulation modeling with, specialist consultants. And unfortunately, the architect just becomes like the, the Stardust, front cover page process persona who will initiate these ideas. But the engineers, I mean, for example, the amount of technology innovation that has gone into air conditioning systems and automation is fantastic. What Lutron has done to bring in a sort of a weave into the method in which you can control, simulate, and process, engineering services in a building is fantastic. And how before even you start building, you can actually come into models which are both technically simulated as well as progress through empirical methods of understanding how it will behave. So therefore today we have the platform, and the country is doing a phenomenal job as individuals and as technology capability. Companies such as very large software companies have done extremely well in these vertical spaces. The problem is application. So how much we can bring that application to easy use and to bring about that nature of change into making our buildings will become the paradigm shift that we will have to learn from.
Okay. Yeah, true. Let's move on to the next question. How can we create adaptable buildings with flexible spaces through an effective facade and fenestration? May I ask this question to architect Sandeep?
Not very sure. Can you repeat the question once?
How can we create adaptable buildings with flexible spaces through an efficient facade and fenestration operations?
No, in a sense, a bit of it is about inside-outside that we try to do. In a sense that, like I said, I mean, we are trying to enclose a building when it comes to a fenestration when it comes to the facade, and at the same time, we would love it to be open when the weather is good, and so on and so forth. So it's not just about glass, but we have been doing this with some success in the residential sector, to be very frank, where one of the issues that Gaurav had pointed out about balconies, right? There are certain times when the balconies are really in use, and there are certain times when the balconies cannot be used, especially in an extreme climate like Delhi. We have been able to design, at least in one project, we have been able to design in such a way with very, very sensitive shading devices, that the balcony is completely under shade. And you talk of the facade, it just provides the balcony as a cool space when the weather outside is hot. And then you can transform it to a pretty warm space when the weather outside cools down. And this is extremely important in places like Delhi, where we have temperature varying from 1 degree centigrade to 40 degrees centigrade, right? So I think that is a big application, and it's pretty much some very clever stuff being done all around. I mean, that's all I can say. I mean, it's beyond this particular, because I can't show any examples, but I think that's probably where we are going to. Adaptable spaces with respect to the climate outside. The very first thing that I said to start this discussion is that our biggest dichotomy is that we are trying to shelter you, as at the same time we are trying to make the skin natural as possible. I mean, these are the ways that we are kind of trying to do it.
Okay. The next question is to point out a few innovations that you look forward for considering facade and cladding materials. So may I ask this question to architect Gaurav?
Can I interrupt a little bit? I'm extremely sorry, but there is something extremely urgent has come up. I'll have to leave in about 5 minutes, if that is not a problem. I'm sure.
I think it's okay. We are on to the last question. So this is the last question.
Okay, if it's the last question.
Yeah.
So there's this very interesting, I think I saw it a couple of years back, and I tried to contact the company also. It was Bloom Frame. It's more like an openable facade which converts itself into a balcony. And it was ingenious. It's a French product, and it's a facade. And when you it's automated, so when you want it, it opens up into a balcony. So that is something which I'm trying to get into a couple of my projects, and that would be something interesting which I want to see in facades out here, because that actually, at least in the urban areas, it gives you a win-win situation where I'm actually using the space and I can create more extra space for the balcony. So I think that innovation would be something very interesting. And as Ravindra said, that engineers are actually pushing that envelope, every time, and architects are just mere plugins. You are plugging in things into your building. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting engineering a product which I'm looking forward to integrate into a couple of my projects, just to share.
Gaurav, on a little issue that you had touched earlier, and I just forgot, I thought I'd make a little comment on that, on parametrics as the future of this. And I have to completely agree with you. And this has been one of our bottlenecks to actually do serious facade innovations in the facade. One of the things is that a lot of architects will come back and say that they can dream of the facades that we talk about. But the second challenge comes in, can we draw? And the third challenge comes in, can we build? So these are the three issues that we have been constrained with for a real long time. And if we can come back, and we had a discussion on AI also, and application of IT in facade also. But I think parametrics, it has been there. It is still there in bits and in the fringes, with a few companies offering it, or they are more like third-party companies who would do it. But the transformation from dreaming as a real facade, let me put it this way, Zaha Hadid style, the second issue, to actually be able to draw it within your organization. And the third issue is actually to get somebody who can build it to that. These are the three challenges that we
I agree.
have
But
to take.
but there is a start. I think we keep looking at areas and projects where we can actually introduce this, push the envelope, and I think that is the best we can do at this stage. And that is what I think everybody is doing, push the envelope, be it in sustainability, in facades, in planning. And I think that's the beauty of architecture, which and that's exactly what we're doing.
Yes, innovation in technology and material. Mr. Juzer would like to have.
Can I
Yeah, please. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Renu. Thank you very much. I'm extremely sorry for this. I have to be suddenly got a message. I have to be somewhere at 5:30.
Thank you so much, Sandeep, for being a part of this discussion and those wonderful informations which you gave our audience. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There are so many innovations happening that it's sometimes difficult to single out a few of them. And I get a sense, as a sustainability consultant, there are so many calls that we get, and it's impossible to even evaluate good technologies or good design which are there in the market. So I think up to us as industry leaders to really help and nourish these technologies that are coming up. But having said that, one thing that caught my attention in terms of innovation was something called the photochromatic glazing. I don't know whether anyone has heard it, but Saint Gobain has something called a thermochromatic glazing, by which with the use of some energy, they could change the parameters of the glazing system. So in the US, there is an organization that has built a glass which changes its properties with the heat coming in. So the more heat comes in, like our glasses, it becomes darker, darker, darker. So in the daytime, it becomes quite dark, and in the night time, the beauty is that it becomes very transparent so that you are able to see outside. And I found this very fascinating. In the context of glazing and facade, I see that many times we use shades to prevent glare that comes inside a particular thing. And we don't want to use a darker glass because then we actually miss out on the visibility outside when there is no sun, or when the sun shifts its position from the east and the west, then we still have the dark glass here, but we want to look out. So this particular glass, which is reasonably cheap, I wouldn't say very expensive, can be used for glazing, will help us do away with shading, and it will be working intelligently, as someone mentioned, and it will change its color during the sunlit hour to a darker color, and in the night time to a lighter color.
Yes, the intelligent facade or the smart glazing, definitely. Architect Ravindra would like to have add some.
I think engineers in the world have done phenomenally well in actually working for initiatives on sustainability and reciprocation to weather conditions and complex phenomena. I think the credit has to go a lot for engineers. We're all just glamour coefficients to follow certain parameters of that. When I say that, even a simple vehicle, I'm damn fascinated when I close the door of my car, the way, there are so many materials that come in that one threshold and clicks shut. And in a dynamic speed of 160, 170, even in harsh rains or harsh weather condition, doesn't leak or doesn't give away thermally to the parameters of what exists on the outside in dynamic speed. I mean, that is fantastic technology. And today we need to bring in, significance of such innovations back into, I think, architectural ideas and making of buildings, and including technology as an important parameter of how we can evolve. So we need to start thinking design build. We need to start making devices and initiating, a group of capable people to be included as part of the innovation media that we must incorporate into making our buildings. I think that is very, very essential for sure. And more, I think, passive systems. I always used to be lectured by Charles Courier. I used to be his chauffeur whenever he used to come to Bangalore. And he would always tell me that it is so important that we must try and innovate passive methods of making things happen as architects. I think that you first avoid the problem rather than trying to provoke an active technological method to resolve a problem. So therefore, I completely think that, for example, places like Curitiba is a fantastic example in Brazil, where, you know, the third world, it doesn't have to be Melbourne, or it doesn't have to be a New York tower or a very expensive, you know, place built by architects or a conglomerate of engineers. But even a place like Curitiba has performed so well. Not many people know about it as part of the third world, that it is one of the most sustainability initiative accurate sort of community that is living as a city, as a fabric of city itself in the 21st century. And what they have achieved as being responsible to their senior community, to their children, you know, to the people who want to be as complete as habitats as about co-living is a big success story. How they kept traffic away, how they kept parameters of anything that would negate living away from their local, and created an accurate urban environment in a passive method is the most intelligent way to capture our program. But I will not at the same point of time deny the nature in which how we can provoke technology. I think these simulations and these intrinsic intelligent methods must be incorporated into, you know, high-rise buildings and places of, you know, habituation which has high density, so that there is a certain method in which we are responsible to the planet. So therefore, that inclusion is mighty, mighty important. But in all perspectives, I think we must learn to have a chaja. I think that chaja is very important, you know, just that little porch and shade your goddamn glass rather than try to do anything technically provocative to get the glass into better shape. I think, so we must try and see what we can be as passive.
True, chaja is always very important in design.
And Mumbai is all about chajas now.
Yeah. The how long you can extend with that chajas. This is also a very crucial question. Architect Vigneswar would like to add something about innovation of materials for facade fenestration.
Working on certain low-cost projects, we are more interested in looking at accessible technology. So we need to find methods and systems of bringing this technology which is available, which is high cost, and make it in such a way that we can, you know, do the jugaad on it. Like create that jugaad and create it for the low cost, run of the mill kind of a project, and you know, crack it. So that is like that gives the enthusiasm into the studio. So we recently completed a convention center in a very prominent location, and the client had a very low budget for it. So we really had to take we had a parametric idea in mind. So to convert that parametric idea into reality, we had to do an extensive amount of research and find out the cheapest possible materials, the fabricators who were working with that thing. How can a CNC cutting machine, how does a CNC cutting machine works? What is the advantage of a laser jet versus a water jet? Those kind of nitty-gritties we had to go into and look into how it can be done and brought into account. So when on one side we look at high tech and other things, we also have the jugaad economy running in our country. And that jugaad and this high tech really needs to work together to make things happen here.
Yes, jugaad, but we have to make sure about the performance.
Definitely. I completely agree on that part. And that is where architects fit into the picture. So we are the ones who will be able to do the performance analysis of the building and make it work along with the jugaad economy, which we are up and running here.
Okay. I think that's all the questions from my end here today. Thank you all for sharing your valuable inputs and knowledge, and also spending your valuable time with us. I'm handing over the session to Renu for conclusion.
Oh, thank you so much. That was fantastic discussion, which was, we never even thought of, you know, things which could happen in the future and what is happening at present. Like I have seen a lot of jugaad happening everywhere where people are, you know, really putting in effort to cut the cost. Yeah, that is because of all our builders and developers, I must say, cost cutting and where architect stands over there. And what is being discussed, cities are expanding crazily and uncontrollably. And the need for sustainable construction is the need of the day. and considering the occupant comfort, which is the key of building facades. Passive energy should looked upon as the for constructing efficient buildings. There is a gap between ideation and construction. There is a lot of imagination happening, but where is the construction going on to? I mean, where the architect's thoughts are or design is, and where the final products are. So to fill in the gap, such discussions and such platforms would definitely help. The real-time facade performance can be analyzed for heat transmission and other, wind and effect of wind and the other natural calamities, which would help building aesthetic as well as very safe building for the future. At some point of time, it was discussed that the net zero building is the need of the day. I don't know how good it would be while considering the 80 floor buildings and 100 floor buildings which are coming up. Where are we going to? Net zero, what is the net zero effect of all those buildings considering the island effect, heat island effect? All those things is another discussion. At some point of time, again, hopefully the government would be more aware of it, and they will provide some incentives, as architect Ravindra Kumar mentioned. That's the only way how we can bring in more of green buildings into the cities. And testing, for the need for testing facade and fenestration, make sure that the rules and regulations are followed through probably some fines. Again, that's an important point. Pedestrian friendly cities, and considering the building construction not as a single building for the cities is another important point which was discussed. Considering the ventilation and green balconies, again, at present with the COVID on, we found the importance of balconies, which was again another interesting point which was discussed, how to convert your building towards, the older type balconies, and where people are not believing in balconies anymore, using it for the maximum utilization of space. The another point which is which went for is the control mechanism for safety regulation norms and strictly following the norms and policing the same thing. This should, I think this should be considered as a main point while you are approaching the developers or builders. More than architects, they should be aware of all these things. Another point which was discussed is the software as a modern tool, and the technologies and material which can be used in the modern construction. Still the software use and the tools are in a very nascent stage. Architects and the younger generation should be taught on all these things which can be used for a better future. For example, the parametric facades were discussed. Our next discussion on the same platform is on parametric facade, which was discussed today. We look forward for that, where there are many eminent architects again participating in the discussion on parametric facade, which will be on again on 27th of this month. We invite all our speakers and our listeners, our audience to participate and contribute to the window and facade, that is magazine, as well as to the WFM community, where we are trying to bridge the gap between knowledge, the expertise, and the younger generation of architects, where you all can advise them, and to bring in brands. At present, there are hardly any platform where the brands can present their future ideas and the new products. So this again, it can be a platform where you can interact with the brands to to generate kind of sustainable buildings through their products. So thank you so much. Thank you for all the speakers to be a part and of this platform. And probably if we get some questions on your talk today, we will be handing over the questions to you. We will be emailing it. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Renu.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.